Patience can be and is hard. We recently went on a wonderful trip to Colorado just a couple weeks ago. 6 adults and 1 4-year-old with a 10-hour trip in between the beautiful Rocky Mountain National Park and some of the most beautiful hiking that God was able to grace us with. We took 2 vehicles just so we could go through and spread out, be a little bit more comfortable, and we like to take a lot of stuff, so we needed the room. But the main objective for Sarah and I was to keep Joey occupied from losing her mind. We had everything. We had books to read. We had books to color. We even had printouts of the games from Jane where you go through and track all the cars that are coming on the other side of the road. Joey was always red for some reason. She always won. But then we went through and we had a Roku to set up to the DVD player even to go through and play all of our movies. We gave her a fake phone so she could call her friends and tell how awesome the trip it was. And all of us lasted for about 5 minutes apiece in that order. We woke up at 4:30 in the morning on my vacation day so we could go through and get there in enough time to watch the cats play. I was already grumpy. It was my vacation day. I don't wake up at 4:30 on vacation days. So we go through, and I was not ready to be patient. And 10 hours in a car is just too long for me. Way too long for a 4-year-old. So we made a few stops along the way, go through and stretch out our legs in between times where we struggled to keep Joey occupied or happy in the car seat or staying buckled. Staying buckled is tough for a 4-year-old. And finally, what seems like a week of driving, we show up to this beautiful home in Grand Lake, Colorado, overlooking Shadow Mountain Lake. And I mean, beautiful. The view out the picture window was of Shadow Mountain Lake with these beautiful mountains in the background. Gorgeous. Now, we've been driving all day, eating junk food. I'm sure everybody does that on their long trips. I wanted a good meal, and beef noodles was on the menu while we went through and watched K-State play. But every time we go to Colorado skiing or anything, I always forget how long it takes to boil water at high elevation. It took an hour to boil these noodles, and of course there were 6 of us and 3 of the boys that eat pretty good, so we had to use 2 big bags of noodles, an hour to boil, and we didn't even think about that, so we started at after the game started, so by the time we're sitting down to eat, K-State is getting destroyed in epic fashion. Howard throws 3 picks. Our patience was tested. So the next day, we wake up early again so we can go through and drive through the national park. 6 hours we drove after already 10 hours of Joey sitting in a car. And now we made several different stops to go through and do these little small walks and hikes to go through and see just, again, beautiful scenery. Gorgeous lakes that are sitting at the base of some of these mountains. Seeing animals that are out there, elk and moose. But Joey was not having it sitting in the car the whole time. She did not have a great view because in the Tahoe, the window's about that big, and so she didn't really get to see a whole lot on the drive. So we go through, we make it all the way through the park, and we end up at Estes Park around lunchtime. And so we go through, we eat lunch, and we're able to go through and find a park for Joey to get out and play, or a little playground. So we go through, she gets out, starts playing, 5 or 10 minutes in, stretches out her elbow, gets nursemaid's elbow, and is crying and in pain the rest of the night. And I felt awful for her. And she was doing everything she could to be tough through that time. She was even doing makeup one-handed without moving her left elbow. So at about midnight, we finally get her to take her sweatshirt off. It pops. Daddy, it feels better. I'm good. Our patience was tested that day. So the next day, we decided to go on a hike. Just a short, it said 0.9 miles on the sign. We start on our way, ends up being 5 miles long. That is not made for a 4-year-old. So I think Sarah and I took turns carrying her 4 out of the 5 miles. Our patience was tested. We've all had these moments where we have the illusion or the idea of what we want a vacation to be, or a day to be, or an experience to be, and then life comes in and changes those circumstances. Or we just see a point A and a point B and just the easy straight line to get to it, and life comes in and starts throwing curves in to challenge and test us. This also, though, gives us the opportunity to experience patience and experience and test our endurance. In James 5 through 11, he's speaking now to his fellow Christians at the time and to us now to exhibit and demonstrate patience. So he starts off for verse 7 and verse 8. Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near. So the first statement he's making here is to be patient. The Lord's second coming is near. And he's saying this almost 2,000 years ago, so it's closer for us than it even was him. But he's saying that we need to be in constant preparation for Jesus' return. In the very first verse. That should be in the forefront of our mind, to be in preparation for Jesus to come back. But there's work to be done in the preparation. Much like there's work to be done in preparation for the farmer. In the preparation for the crop, he must prepare the soil. And at this time, they didn't go through and have tractors that go through and drag around. They're physically doing this. They have to plant the seed and then patiently wait for the autumn and the spring rains that are mentioned. And then that will then allow the germination to take hold and then grow to full maturity of the plant. James is saying now is the time to prepare. And prepare if Jesus is coming back today. But, as we know, the crop doesn't grow overnight to be harvested the next day. There has to be a time of patience and endurance. And it's not without that work and that effort and the enduring part in our lives that is when we will reach the final harvest. Now, the harvest mentioned here by James isn't just a generic harvest that we see today. He puts special verbiage or nouns in here to go through and make a bigger point. Now, keep in mind, I'm not very good with some of the language here, so I Googled as much as I could, so bear with me if it's wrong, but everybody said it wrong, differently. But the verbiage here, the nouns, is timion karpon, or precious fruit. Now, this is in contrast to what we have read, or what was stated in the first 6 verses of James. In the first 6 verses, James is talking to, basically scolding these wicked and wealthy individuals. People that have cheated, stolen, lied, even killed, mostly at the expense of the Christians that James is talking to now, to get to their wealth. And this is where the statement from James saying, brothers and sisters, be patient and stand firm. He's telling them to strengthen their hearts and their minds to God and to look to Him through their struggle, to get them through their time of patience and give them their endurance they need. So there will be challenges that are presented to you. But set your heart firmly to God and patiently wait for His word to go through and guide you on what to do next. So next he goes through and tells us in verse 9 to avoid grumbling. So immediately after reading this, I think of the scenario where you have been patiently waiting and saving for a new car or a new toy or a side-by-side or anything, something that you have wanted, and you have been patient for a time. You've saved, and you're only maybe a couple paychecks away or one more deal to go through and be able to get that money to make that purchase. But before you do it, one of your friends goes through and picks it up first. What's the first thing that goes through your head at that time? A little jealousy? And some of that jealousy sometimes can lead to maybe some not so nice words being said, maybe potentially begrudging them because they got what you wanted first. Or just not being as good of a friend because you're trying to go through and create a little bit of distance because you don't know what you're going to say to them. This is an example of something that James is warning us of. To not allow the time of patience that we are in impact others and the love that we should be giving to others. And Jesus tells us in Matthew 7:1, do not be judged, or you too will be judged. So as our trip continued, we had some moments where we were struggling, and we struggled to keep our cool. We had a 4-year-old with nobody to play with her age. And at the end of the day, we were tired from either sitting in the car or 5-mile hikes. And all she did was she wanted to play, and we didn't have the energy or the patience to do it. And there were moments where we did lose our cool. There were moments where we argued on how we were going to enjoy our time on the vacation that we spent money for, and also to go through and ensure Joey enjoyed her time in her own way. So many of us have had these moments, or we have experienced these moments either with our own children or other people's children, just for the example. But then at times there's where we're pushed to our limits. And we're trying to be patient, but we end up just putting our emotions that we're feeling at the time on somebody else to go through and make us feel better. This is what James is warning us of. That the grumbling and the arguing and the begrudging behavior that we can and typically do sometimes show to others is unworthy. It's useless. And then he clarifies it at the end by just stating that the judge is standing at the door. There's somebody else that's judging, and that is not our job. We're here to build each other up, to support each other in their times of patience and endurance and need, and for them to support us in that time, to be true brothers and sisters. Now, lastly, James reminds us of the story of Job, the man that lost everything. Job lost his wealth. He lost his health. He lost his family. He lost 7 sons and 3 daughters. And the only person that he was left with at the time was his wife, that in the end goes through and tells him to curse God and die because she was over it. And then after that, he's confronted by some of his closest friends saying, all the struggling in your life right now, it's just you have some sin in your life. That's it. Which, if somebody's struggling in life, please don't do that to them. That's a horrible thing to do. But in the comparison and bringing up Job, James is marrying patience and struggle and suffering. And here's where we're truly challenged to be patient when we are truly struggling in life or with a situation, or we're struggling or suffering in life. And we know that God is watching over us, and we feel it in our heart, but we don't understand what we're going through or why we're even going through the situations that we're in. But if we didn't have times of struggle, or if we didn't have suffering in our life, we would just be patient for patience sake. We wouldn't necessarily probably learn the lessons or the opportunities that God is giving us during those times to learn about his love and his teachings that he can give us. Over the last few months, I've had a lot of difficult conversations with God. I've struggled with the concept of patience. I've struggled with endurance, especially with God. But the story of Job has grounded me. How can I go through and compare to somebody that lost all of their children, literally lost their wealth and their health, but never once doubted God or cursed God or looked to somebody else to go through and make it right other than God? Job's story is one of total and utter belief and discipline. When everything was going wrong, he still looked to him. Job's story also kind of tells us a way to go through and how we should shape our mind and our heart to go through and speak to God and pray to God and think about God. It is in the times of struggle that we'll learn the most about Jesus and his love. Because we can only see what moment we're in right now. But God knows where we started, all the struggles that we're dealing with at that time, and where we're going to end up afterwards. And that should be the relief that we should feel, knowing that he is going to watch us through this time of our patience, and we have the ability to endure with and through him to get us through those times. And all of the patience that we'll be able to demonstrate and all of the struggles and suffering that we can endure through this life is going to be exponentially worth it when we're seated next to him. So as we finished packing up our clothes for the trip, Joey did not want to leave. Quote, she wanted to stay 17 more days. She doesn't really understand time yet, so we made the 10-hour drive home in 15 hours with stops and everything else we need. Our patience was definitely tested, I think, more on the way back than it was on the way there. But as we get home, we begin unpacking. We're just sitting there by the table going through our stuff. And Joey tells us that she loves us. And thank you for taking her on the best trip ever. Then she started, if you've talked to Joey at all, she is a storyteller. I think she gets it from Sarah. But she just goes through and tells all these awesome stories. But she starts telling us how much she loves seeing all the animals. She got to see a bunch of elk. There was one with great big horns on it right next to the road. And then she got to see a dead moose. And then she got to see a live moose, which is way cooler than the other one. And then she told us how awesome that long hike was, because she got to spend time with us. For Sarah and I, that was our fruitful harvest. For just a small time of patience and endurance. So as we summarize, from the book of James, I really want 3 points to be remembered. Number 1, be patient. Prepare yourself every day, and Jesus will return. Number 2, be patient with others. Don't grumble with others, but love others. Build a community, invest yourself in the community, with ministry and discipleship in mind. And 3, be patient with God. He knows our struggles, but He is the one also that will give us the patience and the endurance to be victorious and get to go through and see and sit with Him again. Let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for the love that you show us. Even in the moments of struggles, you are the one who gives the endurance and the patience to see your works happening around us. We understand we can't do it alone, so we will continue focusing on you, center our hearts on you and our minds on you, and improve ourselves in your image and improve our communities until we are seated next to you. And all of God's people said, Amen.